Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This is Basketball History 101 with Rick Loayza.
Welcome back to award-winning Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network. I'm your host, Rick Loayza, and this is the podcast where we bring to life some of the forgotten stories from basketball history. We are bringing old school basketball to a new school audience. And today we bring you the story of the Buffalo Germans, the first powerhouse team in basketball history. Throughout the history of the game, we can talk about some of the powerhouse teams like the Steph Curry Warriors, or maybe the Chicago Bulls of the 1990s with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. If you go back to the 1980s, we have the Showtime Lakers with Magic Johnson, or the Larry Bird Celtics. We can go back even further to the Bill Russell Celtics of the 1960s, or the Minneapolis Lakers with George Mikan in the late 1940s and early 1950s. If we go back even further, we have the Harlem Globetrotters of the 1930s and 1940s when they were still playing real basketball games and not their current basketball-themed comedy routine. Go back even further into the 1920s and we have the New York Renaissance, the original Celtics from New York, or the Savoy Big Five out of Chicago. These are the teams that dominated a particular era of basketball to the point that they practically defined the game for their era. But for today, I am taking it all the way back to the very beginning of the sport itself. The Buffalo Germans were a team that was formed in 1895, just 4 years after the invention of the game. When we go back that far into the history of basketball, the rules were not even settled on yet. The powers that be were still debating whether or not to allow dribbling, as it was technically not allowed. The players that dribbled were exploiting a loophole in the rules. But with the game in its infancy, here came the first powerhouse team, the Buffalo Germans from Buffalo, New York. They were formed out of the YMCA in Buffalo's east side. The city of Buffalo is in the very northern part of upstate New York, right on the Canadian border. The team called themselves the Germans because the original players were either German immigrants or sons of German immigrants. The team was the first team to achieve national fame. Now, take that national fame part with a grain of salt. The game of basketball was not that popular yet, but for the average basketball fan, if there was a famous team in those first years, it was the Buffalo Germans. As I have described this team, you might be thinking that this was a team of grown men who just happened to be the best team during those early days of the game. But this was actually more like an after-school program that outgrew its original intention. The original Germans team of 1895 was filled with 12 and 13-year-old boys. It was a way to give these youngsters some structured exercise and activity to burn off that youthful energy. It was not a stretch to say that this was essentially a youth basketball team. The guy that put together that team was the director of that YMCA location, and his name was Fred Burkhart, and he learned the game directly from James Naismith at the YMCA in Springfield, Massachusetts. Now, during the first 5 years that the boys played, they had a record of 87 wins against just 6 losses. Now, were they really that good from an athletic standpoint? Were they bigger, taller, faster than other teams? Or maybe they just figured out a system in a few plays before other teams have figured out a system in a few plays. Because if one team has any semblance of an offensive and defensive system and the other team was organized at the last minute with guys who had never really played together, then the team that is more organized is probably going to win. But the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. These boys definitely had some athletic ability, but also they had a head start in figuring out how to play the game of basketball. But the results are the results. And as Rasheed Wallace once famously said, the ball don't lie. The Germans were able to figure out how to put the ball through the basket more often than the other team. They were the best team in their region of the United States. And in 1901, the city of Buffalo was hosting the Pan American Exposition. Think of it like the World's Fair that used to be so popular back then, except this was just for North American and South American countries. As part of the summer-long festival, the Amateur Athletic Union, or AAU, put on a tournament open to all of the participating countries. The winner of the tournament would be considered the best team in the world. Being the local team with a strong reputation, the Germans entered and went through the tournament undefeated to win the championship. Now, what was funny about that championship game is that they had to delay the start of the game because half the boys on the Germans team had school exams in the morning. And the final score of that game was 10-1. Now that might seem like a really low scoring game, but part of the reason is that the tournament scheduled all of the games for just 20 minutes in length so that teams could play multiple games each day. But they did it. They were officially the best team in the world. Now at this point in their team history, the players were now around 17 or 18 years old and had been playing together for about 5 years. They knew each other well and had incredible team chemistry. Well, this championship is a good place to take a break, and I'll be right back as a team plays a tournament in conjunction with the 1904 Olympics.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with a retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.
Hello, sports history fans. I'm Ross from the podcast Pigskin Tales. You're about to jump into another thrilling sports history moment, but first, let's dive into today's sponsor, just in time for the holiday season. Introducing Art of Words, the brainchild of word artist Dan Duffy from Philadelphia. Dan meticulously crafts stunning images by handwriting relevant words from some of the greatest sports moments in time. These unique, budget-friendly illustrations are the perfect gift, sparking cherished memories and capturing hearts. Choose from city skylines, sports, history, and musicians to find a piece for everyone. And here's the exciting part. For that sports fanatic in your life, gift them a piece of their favorite team or player's history. Art of Words tells a compelling story. Explore collegiate stadiums, each meticulously crafted with every football victory etched into words. Or venture into baseball stadiums, handwritten with every player from the team's illustrious history. My favorite on the site is Bryce Harper 2021 MVP year. Because I'm a big stats guy, I think that's one of the coolest things ever. Check it out. Don't wait. Order a print today for yourself and your loved one this holiday season. Transform your wall into a gallery of captivating art and surprise your family and friends with a print of their own. Use code SHN15 at artofwords.com for a 15% discount on your order in November and December. Visit Art of Words, where words magically transform into stunning art, evoking cherished memories and touching the hearts of those who you care about. Again, use the code SHN15 for 15% off at artofwords.com.
Welcome back to the show, and let us continue with the story of the Buffalo Germans, the first powerhouse team of basketball. After they won that AAU tournament in 1901, the players decided to take their show on the road and play anyone who was up for a game. They became a barnstorming team, and they played against high schools, colleges, military teams formed through the U.S. National Guard. They also played town teams, which are a little more informal. But who would not want to take a shot at the champion Buffalo Germans? Well, let us fast forward 3 years to 1904. The Olympics were held in St. Louis in the United States, and the AAU, again, wanted to put on a tournament open to the teams from all over the world. However, nearly every team turned out to be from the United States, but still, the tournament would serve as a world championship since it was taking place as part of the Olympics. Now, it was not an official Olympic sport. That would not happen until 1936. Back in 1904, it was a demonstration sport so that the whole world could see this brand new American sport that had only been invented 13 years earlier. Well, the Germans just had to participate in the tournament. At this point, the players are now men who ranged from 18 to 23 years old as older players left the team and new players were added. Well, the competition was no match for the Germans. They defeated a team from San Francisco by a score of 78-6. They defeated a Missouri team 97-8, and they beat a local St. Louis team 87-35. In the championship game, their toughest game of the tournament, they defeated a team from Chicago by a score of 39-28. And after that, they began to build themselves as the world champion Buffalo Germans. And of course they did. It was just good marketing. They wanted to attract good competition, and there was no better way to do that than to call themselves the world champions, which they were. After the Olympics, the team decided to turn professional and start playing for money. The players were no longer young teenagers, they were now men with bills to pay. So they began to barnstorm around the eastern part of the United States, and they would set up games against opponents, rent out a facility, charge admission, and split the profits. It was not big money, but it paid the bills for just a couple hours of work each night. From 1908 until 1911, they were undefeated. They won 111 games in a row. Now, it was not all great competition, but it was still competition, and staying undefeated for 3 years is no easy feat. By 1915, only 3 of the original players were still on the team. At this point, the second generation of players was leading the Germans, and they continued barnstorming until 1925 when they decided to play in an early version of the American Basketball League, or ABL. In that league, they finished dead last in their first season and decided to close down the team. But they should always be remembered as the original powerhouse team in basketball. They brought attention to the game, and back in the days before TV, radio, or the internet, the only way to find out about the Germans was through newspapers, and the Germans were able to break through and be the team that basketball supporters talked about. And they set the blueprint for all of the famous barnstorming teams that came after them. And just to keep their names alive, here is the roster of that original team from 1895. Team captain was Alfred Hirt, Philip Dischinger, Henry Faust, Edward Linneborn, John Mayer, Albert Manweiler, brothers Edward and Harry Miller, Charles Monahan, George Redline, Edmund Riemann, William Rhodes, and George Schell. The team played for 29 seasons, but that final season was 99 years ago. And for their fame and the way they brought attention to the sport of basketball, they have been enshrined in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame as a team. They truly helped to increase the popularity of the game in the early 1900s when the game really needed that kind of help. So if you ever get to make a trip to Springfield, Massachusetts, keep your eyes open for information on the Buffalo Germans at the Hall of Fame. Well, that is it for us. Join us next time when we share another entry from our Lost Teams of the ABA series. We will be covering the New Orleans Buccaneers. That's next time on Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of Sports Yesteryear. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com to find out more about this and other sports history podcasts. If you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. And check out our page on Facebook. It's called Basketball History 101 Podcast. There you'll find shorter historical posts as well as comments and discussion starters on today's game. I'll also announce there when new episodes come out. I want to thank my producer and editor, Jacob Loayza. Join us each week as we continue to mine the history of basketball for more great stories in the past. Take care and see you soon.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.